To start up Cartoon Crisis 2, I'm going to be reviewing the first episode of Xiaolin Chronicles, and it's been several months since I talked about Xiaolin Showdown when I reviewed the Evil Mundo trilogy of episodes. So, I'm going to be reviewing the first episode of Xiaolin Chronicles, which took place a year after the events of the finale, and I gotta say right now that after watching the first episode, the rest of the episodes didn't even caught my interest whatsoever because of how this episode really has no charm of the show whatsoever, of the original show whatsoever. Now, before you ask, yes, I am aware that this is made by a different company from a different country, and the fact that they don't have the rights from the Warner Brothers company to actually have the same words of the Shinkai Wu used in this, but at the same time, that really goes to show that everything in this show is completely different compared to the original. So after the practice sessions of the main characters, Omi, Raimundo, Clay, and Kimiko, Master Fun suggested that they should find an apprentice to join the team since they're all Shoku warriors. The issue is that at the end of the finale, Raimundo became the leader and became Shoku Warrior. If this was supposed to be a continuation of what happens a year later, but also being a reboot, then you cannot combine both of these to one, because people say that this is a reboot, but at the same time, this is mostly a sequel since that it actually has the same characters as before, and they got taller, well, minus Omi. Not trying to be a bit rude, but I'm just proving my point. So anyway, Omi made this numbering system on numbering the monks in the temple so that he can actually remember which one it is. And I'm just gonna say, like I said, that the characters aren't the same. As much as the voice actors have changed, which also bothers me, I think that even if the original cast returns, I honestly think that it won't change the fact that the writing isn't the same as it was in the original show. I'm just going to point this out right now that I doubt that Omi would ever do a numbering system, because as far as I'm concerned, him being a dictator is just basically what he was about to do if he did become Shoku Warrior in the finale of the original series. So just seeing this right here, I can honestly imagine Raimundo doing something like this since that he became the leader. And just him not being the leader and just completely forgotten about it, all because all the characters are Shoku Warriors, it really makes the premise of the finale of becoming the one and only leader and Shoku Warrior mostly pointless. That is what makes this first episode dreadful, but we haven't even got to the most of what this episode has to offer. So we meet Pong, who is smaller and is also a Mary Sue compared to Omi. Omi isn't a Mary Sue, but Pong is definitely a Mary Sue. If there's one thing that can describe Pong as this, is that he's basically a plot device, and the fact that he's a Mary Sue and can do no harm does not excuse everything. And the fact that this is the first episode, and I will admit that the new Monk on the Block title is suitable for having the first appearance to see Pong for the first time, but at the same time, the execution doesn't even work out when we actually see Pong just running around, and we don't even know where he came from. We all know we've been in the original series where Omi and his friends went to his parents' town, even though it all ended up as a trap from Jack Spicer and Wuya and Hammer War Bean, so that they could distract them in order to get the Shinkai Wu. So it is questionable if there were more people like Omi in this world, but they're probably extinct or something. And with this episode, you really question if there were other characters that are like Omi in this, so it really ruins the purpose of the episode Omi Town. I have no idea onto how I actually managed to think up all of this just because of the appearance of Pong alone, but at the same time, it really makes this first episode hard to actually take it seriously. Even with different wiles, it just isn't enough, especially the fact that Ping Pong in this episode is honestly hammered in, and with him showing up with no sense of development whatsoever and just qualifies as a Mary Sue, it honestly makes this episode a lot more difficult. I really think that the character designs in this, while it is okay, but it really goes to show that the personalities have completely changed. And I honestly think that what they're doing is just doing the same thing like they did in the first episodes, like having a history lesson of Wuya being defeated by Grandmaster Dashi. Seriously, this is literally just this show just trying to give some kind of information to the newer audience, but at the same time, it really makes the new audience that they're trying to go through really confused if they actually missed something. The pilot of this episode doesn't even actually give some kind of fleshing out with the characters, since that with the original cast, since that with the original audience that we actually know these characters, the new audience will probably be really confused and not take this show a lot more seriously like the other cartoons. And don't get me started on the villains in this. I can really tell you that they're badly changed. I'm not saying flanger-wise. Seriously, do you ever want to see an episode where Wuya is actually just trying to help Jack Spicer take over the war by worshipping him and actually having his face over Jax's face? No. That's something that does not work, and it really goes to show that they really don't know how to do with Wuya and Jack in this. Jack isn't really hilarious, especially the fact that his voice isn't the same like he was in the original series. Yes, there was some kind of laws or something that in Canada they can't hire some of the actors to apply the roles, but if Omi, which is voiced by Taylor Song, is the only person who can actually come back, then I honestly don't understand until why they shouldn't have Chronicles happen at a different studio that can allow different people to reprise the roles. Just seeing Omi being voiced by Taylor Song, also being voiced by Ping Pong, even with a lighter voice, it just doesn't make this episode a really good impression whatsoever. And to make this even more frustrating to actually understand that Ping Pong is really a Mary Sue, they really had to hammer in on the fact that he's better than everyone else, despite the fact that he has no training and the fact that it all happened. Now, yes, Omi was powerful than the other characters in the first season of the show, but at the same time, he was practicing completely. And when his friends arrived at the Xiaolin Temple, they were new and they were still trying to get used to the moves in Shingon Wu, while Omi actually is way ahead of them since he actually knows what to do. So just seeing another character being like Omi but smaller but becoming a Mary Sue, I don't even understand onto how he's considered really good compared to Omi. Now look, I am aware that Omi has ego issues and I'm actually irritated by that for the most. But at the same time, he's still a good fighter. So just seeing him being overshadowed by a longer by seeing a longer species of himself isn't really a good idea for this first episode to introduce Ping Pong. Not only that, this episode honestly doesn't even know what kind of direction it goes to, because the pacing in this is just really all over the place. They're about to get to the next Shingon Wu, but then they see a girl named Willow who's facing off some creatures. And after completely stopping them, they completely have Willow to completely join the apprentice, to join the team, because they also need another apprentice, and the fact that they're attracted to her. Yeah, it's the same plot as the Mermaid episode, but at the same time, that episode actually made the characters a little bit more likable and understandable. And just seeing this kind of stuff again doesn't usually work. It actually is further proof that the people who wrote this show didn't even see most of the episodes from the original series. And if they did, they probably did not understand how it became so memorable and good by fans. Anyway, I really don't know what else to say. I mean, we're only 14 minutes into this, and it honestly feels like the characters are just completely just doing nothing, and then just completely getting to the action while stopping to get another character to join in with another apprentice that they're doing, that they're training, that they're trying to give some lessons to. And then when we reach to the point where we actually see them facing off Jack and his Jackbots, it's honestly way too late. At least in the show, it actually had some kind of a purpose and it actually fell in with the rest of the episode. But here, for the majority of this episode, it's mostly filler and just hammering in to the point that I honestly think that anyone who wrote this episode is probably have no idea how to put the direction in this episode on what the characters have to do. Now look, I know that the direction is to have Pong win his first Xiaolin showdown, but since that this is the first episode and he doesn't have any train and he's already a Mary Sue, it makes this first Xiaolin showdown honestly really forced and rushed. And besides, I really don't think that anyone in this will properly actually like the Xiaolin showdowns like they did in the original series, especially the new audience. So anyway, let's get into the Xiaolin showdown, and it's fully CGI. I get that people are mostly just trying to get away from using the 2D animations since that the technology is getting advancedly better, but even if this is a spin-off series or somehow a continuation of the original series, I do not understand why they had to CGI the Xiaolin showdowns. I do not get that. In the original series, it was still entertaining because the characters can move around a lot more better in 2D animation, but in 3D animation, it's too stiff. I get that 3D animation on television shouldn't be over budget, but at the same time, just looking at this type of stuff, it's honestly does not work for a show like this. It honestly makes you mostly discuss on how the characters look and the fact of how these showdowns are easily forgettable compared to the older ones. Why is this Xiaolin showdown really forgettable? Well, it's mainly a ways to get the Shingawu from the top, which is the same thing as Omi and Jack completely doing a Xiaolin showdown by snowboarding. That's it. Except without snowboarding, you have to climb up a hill. And the fact that Pong managed to do all this good on his first Xiaolin showdown is honestly hard to actually to give this character some kind of credibility, because this is the first episode and he didn't even have an arc. And when he actually wins the showdown, people completely worship him in being better than Omi. Yes, I get he won the showdown, but I honestly think that they're really giving Pong too much credit in this, to the point that they really didn't give him a lot of teaching lessons before actually coming to different locations. In fact, they shouldn't take the Sonic Saturday AM route where they should have Pong be in the Wall of Tales and stay at the Xiaolin Temple and actually do some actual lessons while the main characters still go on in their journeys. That is something that can actually work, since that Pong, even though he's been trained as a Mary Sue, should actually do in this. I don't care if the fact that they're just trying to have everything complete in one episode, because this episode's pacing is just obviously hard to get around when everything is happening in the span of 22 minutes. And the fact that this is the first episode too, so I honestly think that everything that we've seen in this episode is just really phoned in. And they didn't even bother to do a lot when it comes to giving some kind of actual development. In the first episode, they actually give only some kind of development. Well, they didn't give only some kind of development, but they at least try to actually show us what Shin Gong Wu is. In the first Xiaolin Showdown, which involves only using the Toonton tunic with Jack Spicer using the Mantis flip coin, that was an entertaining Xiaolin Showdown because it had some effort. Even if it was the first Xiaolin Showdown of the show, and this one was probably the 30th or 40th or whatever in the line, if you want to add the Xiaolin Showdowns with the original show, this Xiaolin Showdown was the first one in the show. And when you try to make an impression like this by having CGI in this and having the characters just racing up on top of the hill with their personalities completely different, then I honestly don't know what to expect other than it's just basically a really watered down showdown compared to the first episode. I really don't have a lot to say about Willow, and yes, I am aware that she is one of the main villains of this show, but at the same time, with my opinions on this episode really low, I really don't have to waste my time on watching the later episodes because unlike Xiaolin Showdown, this show gave me no impression on what the episodes can do in the future. Especially since that, just by watching this episode, it doesn't even feel like it's continuing a arc from the original series. It's just doing the same thing just with filler episodes. I know that isn't true, but as far as I'm concerned, I honestly think that the idea of having another monk join the Xiaolin team or the Shuku Warriors in order to go on journeys would have been better executed than what we got here. Besides, I really think that even if I actually see some kind of positivity in this episode, it still isn't enough to make me see the next episodes from the show. As far as I'm concerned, you would rather probably watch the original series than watching the newer episode, watching Xiaolin Chronicles. Because as much as it's really a shame that we didn't get a continuation after the third season, I still think that they still know what they were doing since that they were building the show from scratch. And when you compare it to this episode of this show in general, then I honestly think that you will probably pick Xiaolin Showdown over Xiaolin Chronicles. Anyway, it's been a while since I talked about this show, and I knew this was going to be a long time coming since I reviewed my first episode from Xiaolin Showdown of March of this year. But at the same time, this was eventually going to be a long time coming no matter what. There's really nothing else I can say about this episode other than the fact that it's rushly paced and the characters are just completely different compared to the original show counterparts. I know I keep saying counterparts constantly, but that's just basically what happens when a show, which is a spin-off or sequel, does something different while trying to be a reboot, but doesn't make up its mind and doesn't have an identity of its own. Anyway, I give this episode a 4.5 out of 10, and we are only just getting started of this month of Cartoon Crisis 2.